Welcome to my channel Echoes of Coin. What if the nickel in your pocket wasn't just small change, but a hidden piece of American history? The 1964, 1972, 1995, and 1996 Jefferson nickels may look ordinary, but their stories are filled with secrets of massive mintages, rare errors, and collectors hunting for hidden treasures worth far more than 5 cents. Could one of these coins change everything you thought you knew about money? The 1964 United States 5-cent coin, widely recognized as the Jefferson nickel, stands as one of the most significant issues in the long history of American coinage. Struck during a period of transition, both socially and economically, the 1964 nickel has become one of the most abundant and yet historically meaningful coins in the United States. The coin prominently carries the inscriptions, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," words that reflect the deeply rooted traditions and ideals of the nation. To truly understand the importance of this coin, one must examine its origins, design features, minting circumstances, composition, historical context, and its role within numismatic circles. The Jefferson nickel series began in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel, and was designed by artist Felix Schlag. By 1964, the design had been in circulation for over 25 years and had already become a familiar presence in the pockets and purses of millions of Americans. The obverse of the coin features a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, author of the Declaration of Independence, and a key figure in shaping the nation's democratic ideals. Above Jefferson's portrait appears the motto, "In God We Trust," reaffirming the national commitment to faith and tradition. To the left of Jefferson is the inscription "Liberty," followed by the date 1964. Schlag's initials did not appear on the coin until later years, but his artistic influence was unmistakable. On the reverse side of the coin lies an image of Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia estate, a structure rich with symbolism in American history. The building represents Jefferson's contributions not only as a statesman but also as an architect, thinker, and man of vision. Above the Monticello image rests the motto "E pluribus unum," a Latin phrase meaning "out of many one," signifying unity among the states. Below Monticello is the word Monticello itself, followed by 5 cents, and at the bottom, "United States of America." Together, these inscriptions and design elements make the nickel a compact piece of historical storytelling, capturing the spirit of America in a small yet powerful format. The year 1964 was particularly significant for U.S. coinage. The nation was on the cusp of a major change in monetary history, as silver coins were about to be phased out in favor of base metal compositions due to rising silver prices. The 1964 nickel, however, was unaffected by this shift since nickels had not contained silver since the wartime alloy issues of 1942 to 1945. Instead, the coin was struck in the traditional composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a metallic blend that gives the coin its characteristic durability and color. Weighing 5 grams and measuring 21.2 millimeters in diameter, the nickel has been valued not only as currency but also as a symbol of stability in the midst of monetary changes. What sets the 1964 5-cent coin apart from many others is its extraordinary mintage. At the time, the United States faced a severe coin shortage, driven by an expanding economy, rising population, and heavy demand for coinage in everyday commerce. To address this shortage, the U.S. Mint produced an unprecedented number of 1964 dated nickels, striking them at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. More than 1 billion nickels were struck with the 1964 date, making it one of the highest mintage coins in American history. Even decades later, 1964 nickels remain highly common in circulation, underscoring the scale of production during that critical year. Yet abundance does not diminish the importance of the coin. For collectors, the 1964 nickel presents a fascinating study in variations, errors, and condition rarity. Because of the massive production, quality control was often inconsistent, leading to coins with weak strikes, die cracks, doubling, and other anomalies. Some of these errors have become valuable collectibles, especially in high-grade conditions certified by professional grading services. For the casual collector, however, the 1964 nickel remains an accessible and affordable piece of numismatic history, one that connects directly to the era of the early 1960s in America. Historically, the year 1964 was a moment of great change in the United States. It was the height of the civil rights movement, a time of social upheaval, and also a period of economic transformation. The issuance of the 1964 nickel coincided with President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society programs, the passing of the Civil Rights Act, and the continuing tensions of the Cold War. Coins minted during this year thus reflect more than just monetary necessity. They are artifacts of a society undergoing significant transition. The simple nickel, passed from hand to hand in grocery stores, gas stations, diners, and banks, carried with it the imprint of both Jefferson's legacy and the living history of the 1960s. Another aspect that makes the 1964 nickel especially notable is the decision to freeze the date. In response to the coin shortage, Congress authorized the U.S. Mint to continue producing coins with the 1964 date even into 1965 and 1966. This was an unusual measure designed to discourage hoarding, since the introduction of coins with new dates was believed to encourage the public to set aside fresh issues. As a result, an enormous number of nickels bearing the 1964 date were struck over multiple years, making the date seem even more common. This decision has been a subject of debate among numismatists, but it undeniably adds a layer of intrigue to the 1964 nickel story. The condition of a 1964 nickel significantly affects its value in the collecting world. Circulated examples typically hold little more than face value, as their sheer numbers keep them readily available. However, uncirculated examples, particularly those with sharp strikes and full steps on the Monticello design, command premium prices. The term full steps refers to the visibility of the steps leading up to Monticello on the reverse. Because of the striking issues that plagued many 1964 nickels, fully defined steps are rare, and coins displaying them are eagerly sought by serious collectors. The 1972 United States 5-cent coin, commonly referred to as the Jefferson nickel, represents one of the most recognizable pieces of American coinage of the 20th century. Bearing the inscriptions "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," along with the date 1972, the coin symbolizes both continuity and national heritage. The nickel has been a fixture in American life since its introduction in the late 19th century, but the Jefferson design specifically has been present since 1938, giving it a long history by the time the 1972 issue was struck. To understand the 1972 nickel in its fullest sense, one must explore its design origins, production, composition, historical background, and the coin's place within the broader numismatic landscape. The obverse of the 1972 nickel features the profile of Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, author of the Declaration of Independence, and a towering figure in early American history. His portrait is left-facing, occupying most of the obverse field, with the words "In God We Trust" appearing to the left of his face and the inscription "Liberty," and the year 1972 appearing to the right. A small star separates the word "Liberty" and the date. The placement of these inscriptions is deliberate, balancing the portrait while also reinforcing the central themes of American identity. The motto "In God We Trust" serves as a reminder of the spiritual and cultural traditions that influence the nation, while "Liberty" is an ever-present declaration of the core value upon which the United States was founded. On the reverse, the coin presents Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia estate. This neoclassical building, designed by Jefferson himself, reflects his brilliance as an architect and his deep interest in the arts, science, and philosophy. Above Monticello rests the motto "E pluribus unum," meaning "out of many one." Below the building, the name Monticello is written prominently, followed by the denomination 5 cent, and at the bottom, the words "United States of America." Together, these design elements make the nickel more than a unit of currency. It becomes a miniature canvas of American heritage, combining Jefferson's legacy with national ideals of unity and liberty. The designer of the Jefferson nickel was Felix Schlag, who won a competition in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel. Schlag's design was slightly altered before entering circulation, but its essential features remained intact through decades of production. By 1972, the design had already been in circulation for 34 years, and though wear and tear on the dies sometimes softened details, it still held a place of familiarity for the American people. The Jefferson portrait and Monticello design would endure until a major redesign in the early 21st century, making the 1972 issue part of a long continuum. The composition of the 1972 5-cent coin was the standard alloy used for most nickels since 1866, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The coin weighed 5 grams, measured 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and featured a plain edge. This durable combination ensured that nickels could withstand heavy use in commerce without wearing down too quickly. The alloy's silvery color made it easily distinguishable from copper cents while remaining distinct from silver coinage, which by 1972 was no longer present in general circulation due to rising metal costs. Thus, the nickel served as a practical middle denomination, bridging the gap between the cent and larger coins. The year 1972 was an important moment in American history. It was a time marked by political tensions, cultural shifts, and economic challenges. The Vietnam War continued, though peace negotiations were advancing. President Richard Nixon was at the height of his power, having visited China in February of that year and reshaping U.S. foreign relations. Domestically, inflation and economic uncertainty were growing concerns. The nation was also still adjusting to the transition away from circulating silver coins, as clad coinage had become the new norm in the late 1960s. Against this backdrop, the 1972 nickel quietly carried forward the stability of a design and composition that had remained unchanged for decades, representing continuity amidst turbulence. In terms of mintage, the 1972 nickel was produced in very large numbers at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. The Philadelphia mint struck over 200 million nickels dated 1972, while the Denver mint produced even more, with more than 350 million pieces. The San Francisco mint also struck proof versions for collectors, though these were not intended for circulation. The combined total mintage of nearly 600 million coins ensured that the 1972 nickel would remain plentiful in circulation for decades. Even today, 1972 nickels are commonly encountered in pocket change, testament to the enormous output of the U.S. Mint that year. For collectors, the 1972 nickel holds particular interest not because of rarity but because of its varieties and condition rarities. Most examples are readily available in circulated grades, often worth only face value. However, high-quality uncirculated examples, especially those with sharp strikes and full steps on Monticello, are more difficult to find. Full steps refers to the horizontal lines on the staircase at the base of Monticello. Due to weaknesses in striking or die wear, these steps are often incomplete. Coins with fully visible steps are far scarcer and command premium prices. This is particularly true for Denver minted coins, which often show weaker strikes than their Philadelphia counterparts. In addition to strike quality, collectors also seek out die varieties and errors from 1972. Like many high mintage years, the sheer number of dies used to produce nickels created opportunities for double dies, repunched mint marks, die cracks, and other anomalies. Some 1972 nickels exhibit doubling in the inscriptions or design details, making them desirable to variety specialists. Repunched mint marks, particularly on Denver issues, also provide collecting opportunities. While these varieties may not always bring extremely high premiums, they add depth and excitement to the study of this otherwise common date. Beyond the technical details, the 1972 nickel also has cultural and symbolic importance. By the early 1970s, America was a society in transition, experiencing generational divides, questioning long-standing traditions, and facing new challenges at home and abroad. The Jefferson nickel, however, remained a consistent presence, a coin that had been used by Americans through the Second World War, the Korean War, and now the Vietnam era. Each time it passed through the hands of an American citizen, whether at a gas station, diner, or movie theater, it quietly reinforced national identity through its inscriptions and imagery. The words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" may have been small on the coin, but they were profound in their message, linking each transaction to the larger ideals of the country. The survival of so many 1972 nickels also means that the coin functions as a time capsule of everyday life in the early 1970s. For millions of Americans, the nickel was used for vending machines, telephone calls, and small purchases that seem quaint today but were an integral part of daily routines. In this sense, the 1972 nickel is more than a collectible object. It is a tangible connection to the past, a reminder of prices, habits, and experiences that defined an era. The 1995 United States 5-cent coin, known universally as the Jefferson nickel, stands as a representation of both continuity and tradition within the long history of American coinage. With the inscriptions "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" appearing prominently on its obverse, along with the year 1995, the coin offers not only a practical medium of exchange but also a small monument to the nation's ideals and the enduring influence of one of its most important founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson. To fully understand the significance of the 1995 nickel, one must explore its design, production, mintage, historical context, collecting value, and cultural symbolism. The obverse design of the 1995 nickel features a portrait of Jefferson, facing left, his hair tied back in 18th century style, an image that has become deeply familiar to generations of Americans. To the left of the portrait is the national motto "In God We Trust," a phrase that not only expresses a sense of religious faith, but also encapsulates the moral and cultural framework within which the United States presents itself. To the right of Jefferson's profile is the word "Liberty," rendered in script-like lettering, followed by a small star, and then the date, 1995. Together, these inscriptions create a balance between the visual weight of Jefferson's portrait and the textual reinforcement of American values. On the reverse of the coin lies an image of Monticello, Jefferson's estate in Virginia. Designed by Jefferson himself, Monticello stands as a symbol of neoclassical architecture and intellectual vision. Above the dome of Monticello appears the motto "E pluribus unum," meaning "out of many, one," a reminder of national unity. Directly beneath the building is the name Monticello, followed by the denomination 5 cents, and finally, at the bottom, the inscription "United States of America." This arrangement gives the reverse a sense of balance and completeness, allowing the coin to function not only as currency but also as a miniature piece of cultural art. The Jefferson nickel design, created by Felix Schlag in 1938, had already been in use for nearly 6 decades by 1995. Schlag's design was the result of a national competition to replace the Buffalo nickel, and though slight modifications had been made to the original concept, his work endured, reflecting both Jefferson's lasting legacy and the American mint's preference for stability in coinage. By 1995, the Jefferson nickel was among the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history, a testament to its acceptance and resonance with the public. In terms of composition, the 1995 nickel followed the standard metallic formula that had been used for most nickels since 1866. 75% copper and 25% nickel. The coin weighed 5 grams, measured 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and featured a plain edge. This durable alloy gave the nickel its silvery color and resilience, allowing it to survive decades of circulation without rapid wear. Unlike other denominations such as the dime, quarter, and half dollar, which once contained silver but had transitioned to copper-nickel-clad compositions in the 1960s, the nickel never relied on silver as a primary metal, and thus its composition remained consistent. The historical context of 1995 provides an important backdrop to understanding the coin. The mid-1990s were a time of relative economic prosperity in the United States, with growth in technology, rising consumer confidence, and expanding global influence. Politically, the nation was in the midst of the Bill Clinton presidency, a period marked by economic reform, international trade agreements such as NAFTA, and a rapidly changing technological landscape. Culturally, America was embracing globalization, the Internet was beginning to transform communication, and the Cold War had recently ended, leaving the United States as the world's dominant superpower. In this setting, the Jefferson nickel continued to circulate as a quiet but essential piece of daily life, passed through vending machines, grocery stores, banks, and households, linking the routines of modern Americans with a design rooted in earlier decades. The 1995 nickel was struck at 3 different U.S. mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 776 million nickels, the Denver Mint produced more than 830 million, and the San Francisco Mint created proof examples for collectors, numbering around 2 million. The total mintage across all 3 facilities exceeded 1.6 billion coins, making the 1995 nickel extremely common in circulation. Such high numbers ensured that the coin would not be scarce, but as is often the case in numismatics, abundance in quantity does not erase interest in quality and variety. For collectors, the 1995 nickel offers opportunities in the form of condition rarity and die varieties. Most examples, particularly those that saw heavy circulation, are worth little more than their face value. However, uncirculated examples with sharp strikes and eye appeal are more desirable. The term full steps, used by specialists, refers to the complete visibility of the horizontal steps on Monticello at the base of the reverse design. Because these steps were often weakly struck or worn down, finding a 1995 nickel with full steps is challenging, particularly from the Philadelphia Mint. When discovered, such coins can command strong premiums, especially when certified by third-party grading services. In addition to strike quality, die varieties and errors contribute to the appeal of the 1995 nickel. Doubled die obverse, repunched mint marks, and die cracks are among the anomalies that collectors search for. Though none of the 1995 varieties are as famous as some earlier Jefferson nickel errors, they nonetheless provide avenues for specialization and study. Some errors, such as off-center strikes or broad strikes, create visually dramatic pieces that are highly prized by error collectors. The cultural role of the 1995 nickel cannot be overlooked. Even as digital technology began reshaping commerce, the nickel retained its place as a coin of convenience. In 1995, vending machines still relied heavily on nickels, as did payphones, laundromats, and small cash transactions. For children, the nickel was often the coin used for candy or arcade games, embedding itself in the everyday experiences of a generation. The inscriptions on the coin, though perhaps unnoticed in daily life, were subtle reminders of national principles. Every time someone glanced at the coin, the words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" reaffirmed ideals that stretched back to the nation's founding. The Jefferson nickel series, including the 1995 issue, also embodies the idea of continuity. Coins are not only practical instruments but also cultural anchors. By 1995, the design had been in circulation for 57 years, seen by multiple generations of Americans who had lived through the Second World War, the Cold War, the Civil Rights Movement, and now the dawning digital age. The design had weathered historical changes, and the 1995 nickel was part of this long line of resilience. In a rapidly changing society, where technology, fashion, and politics shifted swiftly, the familiar nickel in one's pocket was a small but meaningful reminder of stability. For those studying monetary history, the 1995 nickel also represents a fascinating contrast with other denominations. While the cent underwent a composition change in 1982 from bronze to copper-plated zinc, and while higher denominations had transitioned from silver to clad compositions in 1965, the nickel remained essentially unchanged. Its composition, weight, and diameter were constant, giving it an aura of reliability. The coin became not just a medium of exchange but a symbol of consistency in a society where many other aspects of life were in flux. The 1996 United States 5-cent coin, commonly referred to as the Jefferson nickel, stands as a continuation of one of the longest-running designs in American numismatic history. Bearing the inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 1996, the coin encapsulates both a practical function and a symbolic representation of national ideals. As with every Jefferson nickel issued since 1938, the coin's obverse depicts Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, a figure whose influence on the shaping of American democracy remains profound. The 1996 nickel represents not just a piece of currency but also a cultural artifact that carries with it the legacy of American tradition, architecture, and values. The obverse design of the coin features Jefferson's left-facing portrait, which dominates the field with its stately and recognizable profile. To the left of Jefferson's image appears the motto "In God We Trust," words that underscore the spiritual foundation embraced as part of America's identity. To the right of Jefferson's portrait is the cursive-style inscription "Liberty," followed by a small 5-pointed star, and then the year 1996. The inscriptions are carefully arranged to balance the artistic weight of Jefferson's portrait, while also reinforcing the ideological framework of the nation. The mottos and design combine to remind each person handling the coin of America's guiding principles of faith, liberty, and leadership. The reverse of the 1996 nickel continues to showcase Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia estate, an image that has been central to the Jefferson nickel since its inception in 1938. Monticello is rendered in a neoclassical style, with its dome and columns offering a symbol of Jefferson's architectural talent and intellectual breadth. Above the image of Monticello is inscribed the national motto E pluribus unum, which translates to out of many, one, a phrase that emphasizes unity across diversity. Below the building is the word Monticello, clearly marking the historic estate. Underneath the denomination 5 cents is spelled out, and at the very bottom is the phrase United States of America. Together, these inscriptions and design elements form a cohesive representation of Jefferson's vision and the American experiment. The Jefferson nickel design was created by Felix Schlag, who won the competition to replace the Buffalo nickel in 1938. Schlag's original design for Monticello underwent modifications before adoption, but his essential artistic contribution has endured for decades. By the time of the 1996 issue, Schlag's design had already been in use for nearly 6 decades, making it one of the longest tenures of any American coin design. Its longevity is a reflection of both public acceptance and the mint's preference for consistency in coinage, as well as the enduring resonance of Jefferson's role in American history. The technical specifications of the 1996 nickel followed the long-established formula that had defined the denomination for most of its existence. The coin weighed 5 grams, had a diameter of 21.2 millimeters, and featured a plain edge. Its composition was 75% copper and 25% nickel, a metallic blend that created durability and a recognizable silvery color. Unlike other denominations such as the cent, which underwent composition changes in 1982, or the dime and quarter, which lost their silver content in the 1960s, the nickel maintained its original metallic formula. This consistency gave it a reputation for reliability even as the world of American coinage changed around it. The year 1996 in American history was a period of political and cultural significance. Bill Clinton was in the middle of his first term as president, and the nation was experiencing relative economic stability. The technological revolution was gaining momentum as the Internet began to emerge into public consciousness, changing communication, commerce, and culture. Internationally, the United States was asserting its influence as the leading global power after the end of the Cold War. Domestically, discussions around globalization, trade, and economic growth shaped the national agenda. Within this context, the 1996 nickel may have seemed like a simple everyday object, yet it was a piece of continuity, carrying forward a design from the mid-20th century into the rapidly changing world of the late 20th century. The mintage of the 1996 nickel was significant, with production taking place at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints for circulation and the San Francisco mint for proof issues. The Philadelphia mint struck over 829 million nickels dated 1996, while the Denver mint produced approximately 1 billion pieces, making the Denver issue particularly abundant. The San Francisco mint created around 2 million proof nickels for collectors, using specially prepared dies and polished planchets to create coins with mirrored fields and frosted devices. In total, more than 1.8 billion nickels bearing the 1996 date were struck, ensuring that the coin would be readily available in circulation for decades to come. For collectors, the 1996 nickel is not particularly rare in terms of overall numbers, but it offers intrigue through quality distinctions and varieties. Circulated examples are extremely common and generally worth no more than face value. However, uncirculated examples with sharp strikes and strong eye appeal are desirable, especially those graded at high levels by professional certification services. Of particular interest are examples that exhibit full steps on the reverse, a designation given when the horizontal steps at the base of Monticello are fully visible without interruptions. Because striking quality was inconsistent, coins with full steps are far less common than standard examples, making them more valuable to serious collectors. Error coins from the 1996 issue also provide fascination for specialists. Off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, and die clashes appear occasionally among surviving coins. Some examples show doubling in the inscriptions or design elements, creating double die varieties that attract attention. Repunched mint marks, especially on Denver issues, also appear and are studied by numismatists. These varieties and errors transform the otherwise ordinary 1996 nickel into a collectible item, adding depth to the numismatic study of this year's issue. The cultural significance of the 1996 nickel lies not only in its numismatic qualities, but also in its role as an everyday object in late 20th century American life. The coin was used in countless vending machines, laundromats, arcades, and payphones, serving as a token of ordinary transactions that define the rhythms of daily life. For many children of the era, the nickel was a coin used for candy or simple purchases, embedding it in memories of childhood. At the same time, for adults, it was part of the daily flow of commerce, often unnoticed but always present. Its inscriptions, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," quietly reaffirmed national ideals at every transaction, reinforcing collective identity. The Jefferson nickel series, by the 1990s, had become a deeply familiar and stable element of American culture. The design had survived wars, economic shifts, and cultural revolutions, enduring through multiple generations. The 1996 nickel exemplified this continuity, linking the America of Jefferson's 18th century to the America of the Information Age. Each coin, though small, carried within it both the legacy of Jefferson's vision and the realities of modern society. For collectors and historians alike, the 1996 nickel thus represents more than a simple coin. It is a touchstone of American life at the close of the 20th century.